Dr. Pritham Arora. I'll be handing over the mic to him in a while. Before that, I would like to have his brief introduction. Uh, Dr. Pratham Arora is currently an assistant professor, Department of Hydro and Renewable Energy, IIT Roorkee. Prior to joining IIT Roorkee, he was a postdoctoral fellow at Georgia Tech, Atlanta, in Industrial and System Engineering Department. So at Georgia Tech, his research was focused on process optimization, economic analysis, and life cycle assessment of algal biofuels, syngas fermentation, solar fertilizers, and direct air capture systems. So he has completed his doctorate from IITB Monash Research Academy. Uh, his thesis was entitled as Techno-Enviro-Economic Evaluation of Ammonia Production from Biogas Gasification using Multi-Scale Modeling. So I would like to hand over the session to Dr. Arora, and he will be, formally commencing the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Qureshi, for the nice introduction. I believe I'm audible to everyone. And
yes,
let me
you're
share
audible.
my screen as well. So I've shared my screen. And can someone please confirm if the screen is visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible, sir.
Oh, thanks a lot. Okay. So thank you everyone for being such a nice audience. I've been following the session since yesterday, and it has been a very nice experience to hear the interesting questions that the participants have brought out. So it really brings out the inquisitive nature and the learning aptitude of the participants, and I really appreciate that. So taking this discussion further on biogas, we will be discussing the different types of feedstocks that could be used for biogas production. And some of the contents that we will be discussing today will be the common feedstocks that you might be aware of, and most of you might be working with that already. Availability and procurement, what are the issues related to that? What could be the challenges associated with it? And then there are certain feedstocks that are showing a lot of promises, they being agricultural waste, algal biomass, and municipal solid waste. Like a typical example of this is like, I believe like in the news, every one of you hears during the months of October or November, India has a huge amount of straw burning problem. And it leads to a lot of environmental issues, and people have been working on it for a decade. And one of the things that people are trying to do is now to get biogas out of it. It's still not at scale, but it is an emerging feedstock. So this is the type of things that we can discuss when I'm talking about the emerging feedstocks. And if I have to put the objective in one line, it would be to understand the advantages and challenges with respect to the different feedstocks for biogas production. Again, I will try to keep this presentation as generalized as possible. I know some of you are like very good researchers doing PhDs or at professor at different universities, but at the same time, I also understand that some of you might be working with the industry, or others might be just trying to learn this process. So for the benefit of everyone, I will try to keep this discussion as general as possible. So let's start with the term biomass. Biomass is a term that most of you will be using day in and day out. So as the name suggests, it's very simple. Everything that comes from organic matter or living organisms, which basically represents plants and animals. And you would be surprised to know that even presently, biomass accounts for 10% of the global energy supply and 13% of the energy consumption. Now, 10% is a huge, like you might be hearing, we are a fossil dependent planet, and most of the energy is coming from either from crude, coal. But no, a lot of energy is still coming from biomass. A great deal can be attributed to the use of biomass in the traditional chulas or the heating applications. But there are other countries in Europe or South America and even in Asia, which are using biomass quite efficiently for the production of different kinds of energy. And biogas is one of the major of them. So So whenever we are talking about renewable energy, like the discussion might be hijacked with solar or electric vehicles. But if you still see on the table, the facts still say that one of the major renewable energy pathway is biomass. And it still has the potential to make a lot of impact in the future. So some of the examples that would be encompassed in biomass or biomass feedstocks or biomass sources would be the different trees or the crops, then agriculture. The first one is forest, then agriculture. Then we have the industrial residues, mainly the organic content, municipal solid waste that is coming after the use, animal manure, and also the sewage waste. So all this would come into the bigger ambit of biomass. We'll again have a discussion on all these aspects as we go one by one, but just to give you an idea. And biomass, if you understand this, can be converted into useful energy through a lot of pathways. It's not just biogas. We have a whole range, a big range of thermochemical conversion, which would be used for producing different kinds of fuel. If we can go for low temperature, it can help to produce coal-like substance or oil from biomass using hydrothermal liquefaction or pyrolysis. There are processes like gasification for producing syngas, combustion to directly produce heat and electricity. We have the fermentation process, which can produce bioethanol, and a chemical conversion, which basically uses transesterification for production of biodiesel. And all these conversion pathways would be happy to take certain kinds of biomasses. And this is equally true with our focus, that is biogas production. We know that there are different kinds of biomass available, and there are also different kinds of conversion pathways available. Not every conversion pathway is good for every biomass feedstock. Or the other way around, not every biomass feedstock is good for a conversion pathway. So we need to decide which pathway is good. And today our focus will be biogas. But wanted to give you this picture to say that just don't, we can't go blindly that if there's some biomass available, I'm going to go produce biogas out of it. That is not the way it should be done. There are only certain biomass feedstocks which would be good for production of biogas. And we should be aware what they are and how to utilize them. And that is particularly the aim of today's session. So if I was to make a very basic guess of what kind of biomass that would go very nicely with biogas production, and or anaerobic digestion, as is the scientific term, because like this process is anaerobic and it's basically a digestion by the different microbes that I have. So we have the term anaerobic digestion. So I would need a biomass that has a good water content, at least more than 50%. And then I would also go for biomass which is less bulky and fibrous. So this is the area I'm looking towards anaerobic digestion. So if you were to explain to a layman what kind of feedstocks that you would use for biogas production, there are two things. It should be less bulky or fibrous and inorganic matter. If you have a biomass that is a sort of wood, say example wood, it's much more bulky, it has much more fibers, and it has some amount of inorganic matter in terms of ash, kindly go for combustion. Don't go for anaerobic digestion. And it is always helpful to have a good amount of water content. So biogas, we have been trying to understand about it in the past few classes. It's basically a mixture of gas which would primarily consist of methane and carbon dioxide. So it's around 50 to 70% of methane, 30 to 40% of CO2, and then some amount of H2S, water, and some trace gases maybe. It can again be produced from a huge amount of feedstocks. And it is produced by the process of anaerobic digestion with like methanogen or anaerobic organisms. It's basically a closed system which is happening in an anaerobic digester or a bioreactor. And this is what a typical digester would look like. You all are aware, you must have an image in your mind. You would have an input, and this is where the biomass gets digested, the gas gets collected, and then you have the digested coming out from it. And this is how a typical biogas plant would occur. So there might be different stages to it, different types of look to it, but nonetheless, most of the process looks similar. But inside it, there is something very complex happening. Different kinds of molecules are being broken down into simple molecules. Professor Sanjeev has already given you an understanding like how these things happen. So this figure was just to give an explanation that this is not just a straight path, that one thing getting converted to other, the other getting into, it's not a straight path. There's a lot of interaction that is occurring. So if one biomass feedstock is rich in carbohydrates, it doesn't mean there's going to be a straight path that is going to happen. That is not the way it is going to happen. And if we are co-digesting a number of feedstocks, which is a normal practice nowadays, these things become even more complex. Some reactions will be happening faster than the other, but there would be also some reactions which will be producing much more methane, which is our final product. So we need to see the trade-off and the balance between this. Like, do we need to produce the biogas in a faster way, or do we need the content to be more economic in nature? So let's coming back to the topic of today's presentation, like what are the different kinds of feedstocks that would be available to us? So if I go with the taxonomic rank, the feedstocks could be divided into either a plant origin or animal origin, as simple as that. Then there could be what is the sector in which the feedstocks are getting originated. It could be the agricultural sector. We have the animal manure, which is by far the largest feedstock being used in the Asian countries, or in the SAARC countries, I would say. Then we have the vegetable byproducts or the crop residues, and catching up is the energy crops. These kinds of crops are mainly used in Europe, and they are doing very nicely. Then we have the industrial feedstocks, which are coming as a byproduct from the different industries. And among them, the perspective, of course, like there are agro industries, which would have a lot of output. Something to look after is the byproducts from the biofuel production and biorefineries. Now, there are many biomass conversion facilities that are coming around. And what happens in those biomass conversion facilities that you are focused on one product, but there are other byproducts which are not converted and left to stay. These particular feedstocks can be a very good source of biogas production. Then again, we have the municipal waste, which is the waste that is coming out from our homes. And that has a huge amount, like whether that municipal waste goes in terms of the sewage sludge or the solid waste, the decaying matter would release some amount of methane if it's left untreated. Why can't we use that for biogas production? And that is again when major countries in the world are doing. And then there are also aquatic biomass, which is again an emerging feedstock, and it would be like it would be a good focus for countries like Maldives or Sri Lanka, which are having a huge coastline, and they would like to explore this the availability or growth of this biomass in the long coastline that they have, and the possibility of converting that into biogas. Apart from that, there's one other way how you would classify biomass. So I've already taken you through two of them. One is the taxonomic one, means either the like plant origin or animal origin. Then the other could be the sectors. And then there is also called the generations of feedstocks. So as the technology has been proposing, there have been different generations of biomass feedstocks that have been proposed. Around 50 years back, people were again trying to produce bioenergy, and the common ways at that time were again biogas as well as what you call biodiesel, transesterification. And what many people were doing is they were using the crops which were used for food purposes for production of fuels. And then there was a huge lobby against that. Like, how come you are using the crops that are meant for human consumption or production of energy? We have a huge population in the world which don't get food to eat, and at the same time you're trying to use these crops for providing energy for another section of the people who are very well to do. So there was a lot of opposition to that. It was reduced. So 1G feedstock basically means those feedstocks which have a food value attached to it. Then people or like the scientific community started looking towards different feedstocks which don't have the food versus fuel conflict. So this conflict has to be totally avoided. Then came the 2G feedstocks that mainly comprises of the lignocellulosic biomass. And it's not lignocellulosic biomass as such, but it consists of the energy crops, including the grasses. as well as the different residues. Now, these residues can again be divided into three types. First one is the primary residues, which means they're available in the agricultural field. A very common example is the straw that we see in the fields. It's spread out. You need some technology for collection of it, but it's available at the field, and that's called a primary residue. Then comes secondary residue, which means that is available outside the industry. Something like coming out from a like biofuel facility or the bagasse that is left after the sugar refinery. Then we have the tertiary residue, which means the municipal solid waste. So there are four categories of 2G feedstocks: energy crops, primary residue, secondary residue, and tertiary residues. All the four of them doesn't have any food value, and that is why they call the 2G feedstocks. And most of the time, when we are concentrating for bioenergy and biogas specifically in the SAARC nations, we are going to focus on these 2G feedstocks. Because if we are going to for 1G, again, that debate of food versus fuel is going to come up. And an additional to food versus fuel is the land also. Like, wow, how come you're using the land, which is scanty? Like, because most of the SAARC countries have a huge population load and they need to feed it. You can't just use the land, which can be used to grow crops for production of fuels. Then people also started looking like, how come like there's a problem with land, can we think of something that doesn't require land? And then people came up with the 3G feedstocks, the third generation. It basically has to deal with the aquatic feedstocks, which comprise of microalgae and macroalgae. And again, there are many conversion pathways for that. And biomass production through anaerobic digestion is one of the major pathways. Professor Sanjeev Kumar, who was a speaker before me, is one of the pioneers of research in that field, producing of biogas from algae. And this is something that is catching up very fast. It might not have reached the industrial level application till now, but nonetheless, it has a lot of potential in the future. But scientists and technology didn't want to stop. And recently, they came up with something called as 4G feedstocks. What I mean by 4G feedstocks is that can I genetically modify the bioorganisms to produce the final product? Now you have been hearing about like there are different kinds of like heavy metals or different things that can be prohibitive for production of biomass. Can I genetically modify the cell structures such that these problems don't arise in the future? So any biomass feedstock that has been genetically modified to suit to a particular application would be coming under the 4G applications. And very typical examples of these have been again algae. And there have been not much research into the production of biogas from the 4G feedstock, but it has been mainly termed as bioethanol production. So when we are going to talk about biogas, there could be either 1G. In 1G, like there could be energy crops like maize, which could have a food value. Then the 2G feedstock, which will be coming from different residues, and a major among them would be cattle manure. Then 3G feedstocks, which would comprise of the aquatic biomass. 4G feedstock is that is currently in the lab scale, and it won't do us any benefit if we talk about it as of now. But if any one of you is interested, kindly go and have a look into these. Now, let's have a brief perspective of the SAARC member states as well. We'll briefly go through them, like what are the major feedstocks available, and if time allows, we'll come back to this analysis again. So if I talk about India, and since I'm based in India, like this is the country for which I would have the maximum amount of information. A lot of potential has been attributed to two things. One is the livestock. Specifically in the northern part of the country, we have huge number of cows and buffaloes, and they're used for milking purposes. And they're producing a large amount of dung, and this dung can be very efficiently utilized for biogas production. Due to some reasons, we haven't been able to do that very efficient in the past, but now the government is coming up with the different schemes. One example being Satat, about which we were having a discussion yesterday. Then we have huge amount of agro waste as well. And a typical example is the straw waste that lies in the fields. We have a huge population, and with population also comes with solid waste and wastewater. So these are the four areas in India which would have a huge biogas potential. If I talk about my neighbors, Pakistan again has a huge amount of livestock, and this is where they can use it to produce a huge amount of biogas. Plus, they have huge metropolitan cities as well, and these metropolitan cities would be a source of both sewage as well as municipal solid waste, and they can be used very efficiently because earlier they were very archaic technology that were used for the treatment of these processes. But now the thinking is changing with the development technologies that are coming from the West. People now want to extract as much profit from the conversion of the waste as possible. So the waste are no longer waste, but they have a value attached to them. Nepal again has a good amount of livestock population which they can use for biogas production. Bangladesh, another agrarian country, could have a huge amount of crops and forest residues and livestock waste. Bhutan has a good amount of fuel wood, but it can't be used directly. It could be used as a co-digestion, but the major source again remains with respect to the animals. This is something similar to for Afghanistan as well, which wouldn't have much, which would have a huge amount of agriculture. And if I talk about my neighbors in Sri Lanka and Maldives, then there is the possibility of aquatic biomass there. I'll be coming back to this discussion towards the end of my presentation. Okay, so let's go one by one to the different different types of biomass feedstocks that are available. The first one and the most common being biogas, animal manure. In India, we also call this as gobar gas. Now, gobar is the Hindi word for animal manure, and so you can see the relationship. Like a lot of things has been attributed to animal manure, and one of the primary reasons why animal manure was being used for biogas production was because it was a menace that people wanted to do away with. At the same time, it is also responsible for a lot of emissions. Like if I go by the FAO statistics, animal manure is responsible for 18% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. And you would say, how come this is too high? The reason being, if I talk about the US statistics, it is this animal dump is responsible for 9% of the human-induced emissions and 37% of emissions of methane. Now, methane, you need to understand, has a potential that is 25 times, more than 25 times, depends upon the time scale you're looking at, of carbon dioxide. So 1 kg of methane is equivalent to 20 kg of CO2. Plus, it also has some emissions with respect to nitrous oxides. So this was the reason why people wanted to convert this particular waste into value, because anyway methane was leaking out of it if you just leave it on the land. So why not have some energy being produced out of it? And then anaerobic digestion came out to be a unique solution for animal manure. It was easily available. It was easily to operate, and the output was that you get biogas, and you also get a digestate, which is a valuable biofertilizer. And manures could be coming from a variety of animals. It could be pigs, cattle, poultry, horses. Like it could be different in different countries. But there could be a difference in the yield of the methane. So I told you, like, the primary reason why people wanted to convert the animal manure was because was environmental. They were not looking at economic. But the economic thing is that is something coming up very recently. And when people started working, they thought like there's value to it, and then they started quantifying it. So here I give a comparison of the type of feedstock and the methane yield. So the methane yield could be either meter cube of methane per volatile solids, or it could be per meter cube of the input feedstock. Now I remember yesterday someone asked like which is the feedstock that would produce most biogas. So this question is a bit tricky to answer because the amount would vary based upon whether you're talking about the solids available or the volume, because we have a density that we need to multiply. When we are talking about slurries and solids, the density could be hugely different. So whether you're talking about the methane that is produced per solid, it would be very different from the methane that is produced in the volume. So again, you can see if I am talking about solids, the methane content could be high because in terms of meter cube, but in effective, I was always working with slurries. So I will also prefer to work in slurries, and this brings down the methane content, which is one of the major energy source. You also need to understand that not all the biomass feedstocks are going to give you the same composition of the gas. Of course, we are talking about, one thing is to talk about the amount of biogas, and the other thing is we also need to worry about the methane content in that, because CO2 is not going to fetch us much value. Of course, you can like bottle it and then send it to industries, but the usage of CO2 in the industry is not very great. The only thing that is going to fetch you an economic value, either through as a transportation fuel or a fuel to the industry, is the methane content. So we need to be always also worried about what is the methane content. Sometimes it might happen that the methane content is high, but the absolute amount of biogas is low. So we need to be concerned about that. Now, what are the limitations that are with respect to the anaerobic digestion of animal manure? The first thing is low methane content. The methane content is not very great. Then the transportation costs can be high. For animal dung slurries, it has been stated that if you are transporting them for more than 5 kilometers, the process is going to be economically not viable. Of course, like these statistics would change from country to country, and there is no rules of thumb. But again, the general statistics has been like it has to be less than 5 kilometers. So if you're talking about large-scale biogas plants, which I believe most of you are interested in, all the cattle or the feedstock needs to be within 5 kilometers of the range. Now that sometimes can be a challenge in itself. Sometimes the slurries and manures can have a high content of lignocellulose as well. And one of the reasons behind it is like normally when you go to the cattle sheds, they don't have a very clean atmosphere, and the dung would be falling on the floor and you would be collecting it. And there would be a lot of impurities that would be going into it. And some of them could be lignocellulose. And when they keep pile up in the digester, this could lead to not so healthy conditions. And low methane output of the manure does not always lead to economic sustainability of in manure digestion. So what people have normally said, like if I just have animal manure, I would happily digest it with some other things rather than just digesting animal manure. Now remember, why we started with the animal manure in the first place? It wasn't economic, it was environmental. And that was the reason we got into it. To make it economic, now people are suggesting go for co-digestion. By co-digestion, I mean I am trying to use different feedstocks along with cattle manure. And what are the advantages of it? First thing is it could lead to the dilution of some of the toxic substances in case the other feedstocks are coming from industry. It could help balance the nutrients because these cattle dung have a very good nutrient balance. They also have a good supply of microorganisms, which could help. Economic benefits in terms, it would increase your methane. So higher methane means higher economic benefits. And they could also help in increasing the organic loading, which would mean a higher methane, and a higher methane means higher economic benefits. So if you see about the future, these kinds of manures would, and if you're talking about the economics, and if you're relying on the biogas too much, possibly it would be good to go for a co-digestion. And again, co-digestion means like you would use sewage sludge or municipal solid waste, algae, agricultural crops, or different ways that are available along with the cattle manure. And cattle manure, being a very nice feedstock, would provide a buffer for fluctuations. It would help control any unduly fluctuation that will be occurring and provide a steady operation for the plant. Then comes another kind of feedstocks, that is the crop residues. Again, these crop residues could be coming from different types of crops. It could be very green in nature, or it could be bright, like the photo as you can see in here. Again, it could be having low quality or spoiled crops, some vegetation that doesn't go very nice, or the cattle feed or the silage as it is called, and it's not very good, or it has been damaged by different pathogens. So they all can lead to these residues. And these residues can be are being tested or tried for co-digestion with manure. And as I've already given you an example of the straw in India, this is one of the possible solutions that people want to look at. One thing that you need to work when you're having a feedstock like this, you need to reduce the size. The typical size that would be acceptable in a biogas digester would be around 1 centimeter. It would ensure that it has a good digestion. And like my colleague, Professor Sanjeev Kumar, has already given you a glimpse of the different pre-treatments that might be needed. And what really happens in the pre-treatment is that you decrease the size, and this would be certainly needed if you're talking about the crop residues, because they have good amount of lignocellulose. And this lignin and cellulose and hemicellulose taken together are called lignocellulose. And this don't act very nicely with, or doesn't go very well with the bacteria or the microorganisms. So these are living organisms, and you have to go by their likes and dislikes. The first thing is you have to reduce their particle size. And the other thing that you need to do is you need to break the bonds among cellulose, lignin, and hemicellulose. Till the time they are together, they are very difficult to digest. Once they are in the form of cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin, they become somewhat easier for the bacteria to convert into simple molecules and finally convert that into methane. So these kinds of feedstocks you're looking for, you would have to go for different pre-treatments. And as has already been told, that different kinds of biological treatments which are based on bacteria or enzymes, they are gaining a lot of prominence nowadays. The reason being they don't have any harmful side effects and they are not very energy intensive. Then comes, why don't we grow energy crops? There are many crops that are coming in which are grown just for the production of energy. These kinds of crop might not have much of much of a perspective, or they wouldn't be seen in a good light in the SAARC countries, because we have a huge population load and we don't have much of land to spare for growing energy. But nonetheless, it would be we can discuss those. This is finding a lot of application, like maize is grown in huge quantity in countries like Germany or Sweden, where they are grown on a large scale and producing energy. And again, there are different generations of energy crops. First, it was mainly related to the crops which have food value as well. Then came in the second generation crops like switchgrass, miscanthus. And now they're also looking towards third generation, which this is slightly different from the generation that we have from the biomass feedstocks. But again, like people have been going further. The advantage with that is like you have the energy crops. And one of the previous disadvantages that I forgot to mention in the last case was, if you're talking about the residues, those residues would be available only in the seasons, on the harvesting seasons. There could be 2 or 3 at maximum. And normally you would want to operate your plant in a continuous fashion. This is not a chemical engineering plant which you can start up or shut down at your leisure. These are bacteria, and they have set up a colony, and they want to live peacefully as long as possible. So they would want the plant to run as long as possible. And this is where again co-digestion comes to a rescue. Like when the production of residues is less, mainly you can run on the manure. And slightly do away with the problems with respect to the availability of residues. People are coming with the energy crops. The advantage of these energy crops is that like their harvesting is done throughout the year, or many of them. Of course, they would have their harvest seasons as well, but they are also doing a good amount of storage. So you need to take care of the storage a lot in this case. Plus, these kinds of energy crops, and they would be low maintenance, but they would be high in terms of the economics or the power or the energy that you would need to put into it. See, this is maize being cultivated in Germany, and you can see like you would normally be working with high-end machinery like this. And this is again one of the reasons why this has been able to work economically in the European or the American countries, because they have access to technology. And these kind of technology is cheaper as compared to in India, where we would rely much on the manual labor. And this brings down the productivity of the field. Again, to give you an example, so in the earlier class, this was maize growing specifically for production of biogas. And then you could have another energy crop. This is called miscanthus. And you can see it can achieve a good height, and you can cultivate it like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, like as you want, and it will be very fast and growing. So these kinds of crops would come under the ambit of energy crops. And these kinds of crops can have a variable methane yield. You can see the methane yield could be very different. So we need to decide, like, and not every energy crop would be able to grow everywhere. But if you have to look, like, these are some of the prospective yields, and there could be a high difference among them. So we need to do some experiments before we are going up with the setting of an energy crop, specifically for bioenergy production. Now coming to the limitations of energy crops. Now one basic problem that you would come across when you're growing crops specifically for the production of biogas is that the composition of the crop and thus their suitability for anaerobic digestion would vary with the stage of maturity. Now, if you are cultivating the crop at 3 times in a year, so I'm just talking about like some of the crops that are not available throughout. What would happen is, as time proceeds, and as the crop matures, its lignocellulosic content will keep on increasing, and the moisture content would be decreasing. So just see any crop that you, any plant that you have planted in your life, in the initial stages of its life, it's much more green and starts to build up more matter as time proceeds. And this is true with energy crops as well. So specifically for if the suitability of anaerobic digestion is concerned, we would like to cut these crops till they have a huge moisture content. But this makes it difficult for storage. The storage life decreases if we are cutting the crops when they're still not matured. If I go to the other dimension, if the crops are getting matured, they have good amount of lignocellulose, the storage becomes easy, but at the same time, they would need good amount of pretreatment as well. So this is a trade-off that you would need to understand at what time do you need to harvest your crops. If you harvest it early, it would be good for biogas production, but bad for storage. If you harvest it later in its life, it would be good for storage, but you would need a pre-treatment for biogas production. So this is a trade-off that everyone, you should be able to answer if you're looking towards energy crops. Then it also needs high amount of fertilizers, pesticides, and there's energy in harvesting and transportation as well. So if you're looking high-end equipment for working or like for producing these crops, it would need energy and you need to justify that. Again, like this is the same point, the cellulosic content will increase in maturity and it would negatively affect the methane yield. And in countries like us, like in the SAARC countries, there is going to be a food versus fuel chaos, like whether we can use this land for energy crops production. And then comes another feedstock, which is called the industrial feedstock. Now we have huge industries. To give you an example, there's the food and beverage industry, fodder industry, fish processing industry, milk, starch, pharmaceuticals, biochemicals, cosmetics, paper and pulp, and of course, slaughterhouses. So these are huge places which has a huge amount of side products or co-products. And biogas could be used, like biogas could be one of the avenues for making use of this, because most of these are localized, like available in a localized fashion. You don't need a collection cost or a transportation cost that would be needed. But the problem is that they could have their own issues in terms of they could have some of the inhibitors or some of the characteristics that make them unsuitable for long-term use in the production of biogas. And that is why a common term that is used for feedstocks like this is methane boosters. Why don't you run your biogas plant based upon the feedstocks that are available in plenty, something like cattle manure or residues, and then use these feedstocks as methane boosters? Because if you put too high, or if there's a fluctuation in the properties of these feedstocks, this could render your process useless. But at the same time, some of these feedstocks have very good methane yield, and that is why the term methane booster is being used. So what people are proposing is, like, base your biogas plant in some of the feedstocks that is easily available and use these industrial feedstocks that are available as methane boosters, such that the plant doesn't go in either of the extremes, as like if you are comparing about the pH or the other contents like ammonia, and which cannot be, which are not very good for the functioning of the plant. Again, like these kinds of feedstocks can be digested either in decentralized large co-digesting plant or at the industrial production plants. But these, if you go for co-digestion, they can help provide an increased process stability and less sensitivity to like inhibitors like ammonium sulfide. So again, co-digestion is one of the things that has been proposed as the to-do thing if we are planning to use industrial feedstocks, because if we are not aware of like what kind of things that will be coming out of it, there could be troubles. And also, like as the regulations are increasing, and this is specifically true for the European countries, that they wouldn't want the fertilizers or the manures that are coming from the biogas production, and if the feedstock is coming from a harmful industrial product, to be used as a fertilizer. And this is quite apt as well. These kinds of regulations might not be currently there in the SAARC countries, but in the future, as we are growing more and more sensitive towards the human needs, these kind of regulations come in. If the feedstock is coming from an industry that involves some pathogens or like some harmful chemicals are being utilized, and the fertilizer is coming from the biogas production, anaerobic digestion of that, there could be issues. Again, I've tried to highlight this fact. One thing that is coming up again in a big way, or that is being shown a lot of potential, is the concept of biorefinery. So a refinery is a chemical plant which has a lot of products. And earlier people were talking about like either biomass gasification or anaerobic digestion or biodiesel production. But now they want to look as biomass as a whole, because different features of the biomass could be used for production of like different kinds of products. And this is true like with the bioethanol products. Like in India, we are going at a very fast rate with the production of bioethanol that can be coming from biomass. And one of the leading countries in this, of course, is Brazil, which has a huge sugarcane population. And these bioethanol plants can have a good amount of silage that can be used in aerobic digestion. And this could be used for production of gas that could be used to like either for electricity purposes, or it could be used for as a fuel. Like methane is a energy carrier, and it's up to you how you want to utilize that. Then comes the municipal solid waste. And here I use the term source separated organic waste, which means it is like people have been comparing the different waste, how it comes in. And it's always good to use source separated organic waste. And this is being done again very well in the industrialized nations. If I talk about India, this practice has been initiated around 5 years back, where we are having different bins for different kinds of waste, but it hasn't been able to get that much traction as needed. But as time proceeds, I am hoping that awareness would be reaching, and we would have a source separated organic waste that is available from our homes. And if that is the case, this waste could be very well be used for biogas as a biogas feedstock. And again, like we have the different community kitchens or messes that we have in different campuses in India. Like they could be like campuses of different big universities or different corporates. They are very nicely doing biogas waste, but again, they have a centralized location in terms of the community kitchens. But if we are able to do a source separation at the homes, this could be very well be done on the city level as well. Because what is happening is, anyway, when this waste goes to the landfills, there are fires. So if you would have seen the landfills in India, we have huge landfills outside the cities. Maybe you talk about in Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai. The moment you are out of the city, you would have a picture like this. And if you happen to see them at the night time, you would have the fires been burning. So this is nothing but methane escaping and burning. So better than methane being escaping, why don't you use that for converting to biogas? And then there's another technology which is called this landfill gas. That is again something like very similar to biogas production. I wouldn't dwell into that. That's a different technology altogether. But if someone is interested, like this concept is gaining a lot of prominence again in the industrialized nations, that they would capture this landfill gas and then use this because methane is anyway coming out. But it is somewhat different from the biogas production because there's no digester involved. And if I talk about, like, this is a framework for municipal solid waste that have been proposed in India. And as per the official guidelines, this could be a composition. And almost 20% of the waste would be very good for anaerobic digestion or biogas production. And this could yield to a good amount of value. We did a similar study last year. So this particular mass flow, if you can see for the municipal solid waste plant in the district of Saligaon in Goa. Goa, I believe all of you are aware, is a tourist destination, a well-known tourist destination in India, and we are doing this study there. So they have a 10 TPD municipal solid waste plant being set up there, and almost 40 tons per day of that waste is being used for anaerobic digestion. Such that because of this anaerobic digestion and the electricity production, the whole plant is now energy independent. It is supplying electricity to the grid and it is taking nothing from the outside. So this could be again a huge application of the municipal solid waste. If the segregation is done nicely, and if that segregated material can be subjected to a well-run anaerobic digestion, this municipal solid waste could be a very nice source of energy, such that it could help in running off the whole plant in an energy neutral or like energy saving way. Again, people have always many times been talking about whether they should collect the waste first and then do a segregation, or they should have a source segregated sample. So a lot of the community is of the opinion that the source separation is always better than collecting the mixed waste and then separating it, because when you're separating it after the mixed collection, there are a lot of impurities that might not be able to separate, or the cost might increase. So people are of the opinion, like, if we want to work towards biogas production from solid waste, source segregation could be a nice way. And then even from not so separated, we can take certain fraction, but a major fraction should come in from the source separation. That would provide the biogas digestion plant with much of the feedstock that it would need to run nicely. Then again, what are the limitations? The first limitation is the separate collection, which many people would not want to do. Or like if you are doing, like, it again has an economic aspect to it, like the collection increases, that you would have to collect different things differently. Again, this economics would work in different countries in different ways. Then purity is again a limiting factor. We need to be sure that we have to depend upon the people that they have done a nice segregation of the waste. Because if some things that are not so good for the biogas production in terms of inhibition or in terms of matter that is going to form dead zones, this might not be very good. So this content of foreign materials is heavily dependent on the human aspect. So we need a good amount of awareness among the population for this. Then there is another source of biogas production, which is the anaerobic digestion of the sewage sludge. So the typical sewage sludge that we would have seen in would be doing a primary treatment, then a secondary treatment, and in the secondary treatment they would be using an aerobic process for the consumption, like ASP or like aerobic sludge treatment processes. But with the availability of the USB reactors or upflow anaerobic sludge blankets and similar reactors, people now want to go for production of biogas from the sludge. And this is gaining again a lot of emphasis. Sometimes it might need pre-treatment and sometimes it might not. It depends like where your sewage is coming from. And the sewage sludge is often co-digested again with manure, because this has a huge potential or production for biogas production because of the organic matter that is present in here. But one of the problems is that this feedstock might have a high content of pollutant, and with the risk of problems like COVID, which we are currently going, and people are of the opinion like a lot of the prevalence of the disease is through wastewater. So these kinds of things need to be kept into mind. And if this wastewater is, or like this water treatment is being used for production of anaerobic digestion and then leading to fertilizers, the pathogens can be transferred to our food chain. And this is something that has to be looked into. Then comes another interesting feedstock that is in the ambit of the aquatic biomass. Now, aquatic biomass can be divided into two. One is the macroalgae and the microalgae. Macroalgae basically refers to the seaweeds, and microalgae are small organisms, quite the single cell at times, and they're also called by the name cyanobacteria. And the advantage of that, these kinds of feedstocks is that they wouldn't require land in case you're growing them in the available fields or like the water bodies. And photosynthetic efficiency of their conversion is quite high. So they are almost 10 times more efficient than a normal plant for converting sunlight into the biomass. But at the same time, there are still issues with controlling of their sustained production. Now, microalgae has been big into the market since last 10 years. But most of the biofuel companies, as they suggested, are working in the specialty chemicals rather than producing it as a fuel. One of the reasons being like a sustained high growth of algae is something that we have not been able to achieve so far. But nonetheless, it remains a very high source of lipids, and this lipids can have a good amount of high source of biomass. So it remains a prospective source of biomass for biogas production. If you have a huge aquatic bodies, you can easily grow them, and the growth of these algae wouldn't normally compete with the food chains or the land use. And this is what makes it special, and it's more sustainable as far as its use is concerned. So again, there are some sustainability issues. Like we need to be aware, like Professor Sanjeev has already discussed all these factors, so I wouldn't go into that, that the C into N ratio has to be within a certain range. Then we have the thermophilic and the mesophilic microorganisms working in different ranges. The normal retention should be 15 to 30 days. And we need to take care of the pH as well as the micro and the major elements. Maybe in the interest of time, I can skip some of the slides. So we need to be aware, like there are certain impurities that can come up with the different feedstocks, which would affect the anaerobic digestion. And this is particularly true if you're talking about the agricultural waste. So there could be straw and the wood particles that will be coming in. So it wouldn't affect, like they wouldn't have an inhibiting effect on the process, but the mere it could lead to problems like forming phase separation and floating layers, as well as it can create dead zones, which would take much of your volume of the reactor, and it could have a damaging effect to machinery like pumps. So you would need pumps for operating your slurry as well as sludge. So we need to be aware, like these are some of the things that needs to be cleansed. And then there are certain biomass feedstocks which could have an inhibiting effect on anaerobic digestion. A typical example could be the volatile fatty acids. So as such, the volatile fatty acids can be used as a methane booster. They could have a huge amount of methane production. But if their quantity increases beyond a certain limit, they would exceed the buffer limit, and it would bypass the shock levels of the biogas digester and would render the process not so good for the production of biogas. So we need to take care of two things. One is the inhibitors, and the others are the impurities. Impurities would affect in the terms they can affect your machinery or the normal operation, whereas inhibitors are something that we should be very careful about because they can render the process to stop. And again, like as I told before, like many of the industrial feedstocks are being used as methane yield boosters because they can produce a huge amount of methane. And typical examples could be fish oil from the fish processing industries, or the soybean oil, the different oils, or margarine from the food industries. And then we also have the sugar and the beverage industries, which could lead to this. Another typical example would be the glycerin that is being produced from the biodiesel production. Now, this biodiesel or the production or the transesterification, if you understand, would have a major co-product which is called glycerin. And this glycerin could be very well being used as a booster for methane. Again, the press cakes that could be coming from different industries like juice and oil industries, from producing oils and juices from grapes, olives, apples, and other fruits, could be very well being used for biogas feedstock. So, coming to an end, like I will try to wrap up in another 5 minutes or so. The composition and the characteristics of the feedstock is very vital for design. So, you decide the size of a digester and the operation factor based upon the feedstock. It's not the other way around. You set up a biogas plant and then search for the mass feedstock available. It is always the feedstock that would be dictating for the type of digester that you'll be designing, and the investment and the different feed treatment that you would be using. So it is very important. The feedstock would also determine the quantity and the quality of biogas as the digester produced. And both the things are which would have a specific impact on the economics of your plant. So these are the two main products. And this is the place from where you're going to fetch your money. So you need to be aware of that. An advantage that some of the people can get from municipal solid waste or sewage sludge would be, like normally these kinds of plants also have an earning from the tipping fees. You normally pay someone to collect your sludge, or sorry, the municipal solid waste from your place, and they will, in turn would be paying someone to dispose it somewhere. So whenever these kinds of plants are using municipal solid waste, they're also benefiting from a tipping fees, which can help in the economics of the plant. Then you also need to determine the main objective of the anaerobic digestion. In some cases, like for the household waste, this could be just waste reduction. Whereas if you're talking about the energy crops, this is the renewable methane that you're talking about. So your aim should be clear, whether it's purely economic, it's purely environmental, or purely social. There could be overlapping among them, but you should be clear in your mind why do you want to adopt the biogas or the anaerobic digestion process, and make the decision accordingly. And this is something that I found to be very, very nice. So whenever you're choosing a feedstock, you should always make account of these 9 things. What is the origin? Where is it coming from? What is the methane potential that is easily available in the literature? The chemical composition, the contaminant level, the description, the potential hazards, particle size, and the availability. So these are the 9 things that you should always make or note it down or make a table of when you're working with one feedstock or more than one feedstock. And this would help you give a clear picture. What are the problems that you can expect, or what are the advantages that you can expect in the future? Again, there are some supply chain issues as well with respect to the availability. Now you need to transport this, the feedstock from the place where it's growing to the land. And these kind of things would be an issue if you're talking about commercial scale biogas plants, because this would need a huge amount of feedstock. And if you're transporting something in a form of a slurry, say cattle manure, it has almost 50% of water or more than that. You are just paying or using diesel or gasoline for transporting water. And then the trolley or the truck is coming back empty. So that might not be very sustainable. So this is a major issue with energy crops as well. They tend to have a lower sustainability because they have an intensive agriculture, means a lot of fertilizers are going into it or pesticides are going to it. And at the same time, transportation is a big issue because the energy content for the biogas is not so much. So when we are talking about commercial scale biogas plant, you need to make a very nice calculation of what is the biomass that is available in the close proximity, unless the energy that you're going to put up in the transportation is going to grow very huge. It might not be economically very prohibitive at present, but it would grow in the future. So when I'm talking about the transportation, I want you to look at the distance between the feedstock and the biogas plant. You also need to look at the intended use. So you are not going to get all your profit from the selling of the methane. there's going to be a digestate which has a fertilizer value, and you need to transport that. So that digestate can be either solid or liquid. And when you're transporting that liquid digestate, that would have its like value as well. What is the suitability of road access? Like how good are the roads? Because that would again have a direct correlation, like how the transportation system is going to be. And in some parts like in our countries, like the road system is not very great. We also need to have a look at the storage facilities for feedstock. Because if in case the feedstocks are coming at intermittent or only in the agricultural seasons, we need to have good storage facilities. And of course, like for this awareness is not much, but as awareness increases, we need to be concerned about the hygienic issues as well. We can leave it. And just to give you an example, like these are the huge storage bins that we have in European countries. These are specifically storing biomass for the biogas production. And this is again an example of the specialized transportation that we have for collecting this slurry. And you can see like these are specialized trucks that have been made for collecting the slurry, and they're also being used for distributing the digestate in the fields. With that, like I would like to conclude my talk, and a few points for conclusion. A large variety of biomass feedstocks are available for conversion through the anaerobic digestion process. And there is no one feedstock which would say, like I would say, has all the advantages. So all of them have their advantages and limitations. So it depends on the place where you're located, and you have to choose what biomass could be of value to you. Aquatic biomass could have good potential in the future. Energy crops could be good for countries in the industrialized nations, but it might not have much potential as far as our countries are concerned. Again, industrial sector can be providing good amount of methane boosters. And we can also look towards the biofuel and the biorefinery sector because they have a huge amount of bioproducts which could be used for biogas production. So with that, I would like to conclude my talk, and I thank the audience for the cooperation, and would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Pratham Arora, for this wonderful presentation. And before we enter into the question answer session, I would like everyone to, if they can switch on their videos as well. So I would like to request all the admin if he can take a snapshot of it for our Twitter account. Please do needful. Yes, that sounds wonderful. Please, admin, may I request you to kindly take the snapshot of it. Is it done? So do we have an IT support here?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So you have already taken the snapshot?
Yes, sir. I have taken it several.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Yes. So we are open for this Q&A session, and I just want to mention a few things that for the day one session, I have in the chat box I have provided a link through which you can download the video for day one. And apart from this, if you can see that on the files on your left side of the screen, you can see the files where you'll find downloadable PDF files for today's PPTs for session one and session two. So now the session is open formally for the Q&A session. You can raise the hands and then we can and ask the questions, please. Okay, so here we are. We have a question from Miss Abida Ayaz Ansari. Please go ahead with your question.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Aurora, for the wonderful presentation, and thank you, Mohammad Ali Qureshi, for letting me ask the question. So my question is regarding algae as a feedstock for the biogas production. So we know that algae has the ability to basically remove basically the heavy metals. So for example, if we have industrial waste, which is basically rich in heavy metals, if we co-digest it with algae or something like that, is it possible that we can potentially remove heavy metals and ultimately make the digestate safer to dispose in the environment?
Well, that's an interesting question. And to be frank, I am not an authority on algae. So maybe I'll check and get back to you on this. So I wouldn't be able to answer that upfront.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Right. Okay, so do we have Dr. Sanjeev here who can answer this question? Yes, Dr. Sanjeev Kaur, are you there with us? No, I think he is not there. Anyways, we would like to take the next question. Do we have any next question?
If they don't have any questions, maybe we can give them questions. We can have the quiz.
Okay, wonderful. So that's fine, and I will ask I will ask the admin to launch the quiz, so they can have these questions, right? But thank you so much again, Dr. Pratham Arora, for this wonderful presentation. And either we have like the participant have understood everything, or either they are on a sleep mode, right? Yeah, there could be two possibilities, but I believe that the participants, I mean, this was a wonderful presentation, and I believe that the participants, they must have learned a lot out of it. So, just before we launch the quiz, I would like to highlight that for the day 3, we have a really good, interesting topics coming up. In the first slot, we'll be discussing about this biogas plant design concepts and consideration for establishment of commercial scale facilities, and this was again by Professor Deepak Sharma. And for the second day, for the second slot, we'll be having this presentation on multi-phase uses of biogas and its opportunities with respect to power generation in SAARC member states by Dr. Atmaram Shukla. So stay tuned, and we hope to expect a similar sort of a participation on day 3 as well. From all the participants. I would like to formally, if we don't have any questions now, so I can formally ask the admin to launch the quiz. So the quiz will be actually on, I think it will be in the Google Docs. Yes,
so it will be.
please.
Yeah, it will be. So we'll be sharing it soon. Like Professor Sanjeev is doing that.
Yeah. Hello, Dr. Qureshi.
Yes.
I was not with my computer for a while. So
okay, no issues.
Should I share the quiz now?
Yes, you can share the quiz, but meanwhile, there was one participant, Miss Abida Ayaz. She asked one question. If you can probably help her addressing this question.
Yeah, please, Miss Abira.
Please go ahead.
Hi. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Please.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So I'm Dr. Abira Ayaz Ansari, Assistant Professor from National University of Sciences and Technology, NUST. So my question is regarding algae. We know that algae has the ability to remove heavy metals. And so we have industrial waste, which is basically sometimes richer in heavy metals. So if we can co-digest algae and industrial waste, is it possible that the digestate, which we get at the end, would be safer for disposal for the environment?
Actually, no.
Okay.
Because it will be in soluble form. Sometime it may be under because of the anaerobic conditions, the heavy metal may be in the reduced form that may not go into the slurry, but it may be settled down at the bottom. But obviously, this industrial waste along with the algae will create lots of problem to the anaerobic microflora. So there have been few attempts on that also. Like our group has attempted in I think 2013 to conduct some batch studies, but we could not succeed on that. Similarly, I found some paper, those are talking about the utilization of heavy metal containing algal biomass for biogas production, but still they are reporting very low biogas yield from that. So I believe that there are lots of challenges with the heavy metals when we talk about the biogas production.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank you
welcome.
so much for addressing this question. Now, may we please launch the quiz and uh,
So this time
yes,
the quiz, yeah, please.
yes, please go
Yeah,
ahead.
the quiz is being shared through the Google, and as shared with you earlier, that there is no evaluation policy under this training program. So this is for the self-assessment only. And once you answer the quiz through the Google, you will get the correct answer. After submission of your quiz, you will get the correct answer to the questions. So I'm just sharing the quiz. All the participants can attend from the Teams itself. So the link is here in the chat box. And if required, I can share the link on the WhatsApp as well.
Yes, I think you can also, Dr. Sanjeev, you can also share it on the WhatsApp as well,
Yeah, please
for
share it.
interest of participants.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for joining us for today's session. A very good afternoon, good evening to all of you. Who hope to see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. sharp Pakistan time. Thank you so much for your participation, for your active participation. So now we will be signing off from the session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.